Good evening, everyone. I'm Lance Helms, Director of Studies. I'll be giving the presentation today on QTAC, so welcome. Before we get down to the PowerPoint presentation, which I need to tell you will be on the parent portal, so there's no reason that you'll need to take notes or take pictures, etc. So you'll have that when you want to see it on the parent portal. But first, we're going to start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God of us all, we come before you to make a simple offering of our lives to you. In the events of this year, may we be attuned to receive your word and respond generously as Mary did. May the gifts that you continue to give us be a source of new life and hope to all we meet. St. Marcel and Champagne, pray for us. Mary, our good mother, pray for us. And let us always remember to pray for one another. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Well, welcome everyone. I have quite a lengthy PowerPoint presentation if we go by slides. If we go by time, I'm hoping to get through this in about 25-30 minutes. Okay? So at the end, if you do have some questions, we can have a little bit of question time. But other than that, if you do want to speak to me individually, please feel free to stay back. Now, at the end of the presentation, we will ask that you do, and Mr. Brennan will want to speak to you before you do exit, but we do ask just for COVID safety that you exit through the middle doors, and then please make your way off the campus. If you would like to socialize on the sidewalks or the pathways outside of school, you are more than welcome to, but on the school grounds, please just exit as quickly as you can. We'd appreciate that. Okay, so this information is for parents, not necessarily for students, because many of the students are going to be getting this information on Thursday and setting up their QTAC accounts. So as long as I can get my clicker to work, there we go. And hopefully we'll have a successful clicking time. I didn't have too much luck 2 weeks ago. Okay, well, QTAC lets you know what it is. So run by the universities in order to get students admitted to universities. So there's lots of information on the QTAC website. They market themselves greatly. They want all students to try to go through tertiary study through QTAC. That is just the Queensland way of doing things. Okay? So we encourage students and parents to get on the QTAC website and familiarize themselves with it. And that's the best way to know what's happening with it. But its main purpose, I've gone too far, is to assist students to get into these universities and to get these universities to get students. Please keep in mind, as you're going through this process, universities are a money-making business. So having bodies on chairs are very, very important. But through the process, some degrees are going to be a lot more selective than others. And what can happen is that because of low numbers, students get admitted to a university course of study, and then they find out that they have to do bridging courses. So that's why it's very, very important as students are applying for certain degrees, they know that they have the prerequisites and a sound understanding of that information, even though they may have been offered a position for a course of study. I'm going backwards now. Here we go. Now, sometimes students don't want to go to university in Queensland, and there are other ways that they can get information. So Course Seeker is one way they can find out about universities in other states. Okay, so admissions criteria can vary on university. Institution to institution can be very, very different, and their processes very, very different. So it's very important that students are looking into the university itself if they have a specific interest. Medicine specifically can be very, very different at UQ with the process of enrollment than it is at JCU. So the more you're aware of what needs to be done for particular universities, the better off you are going to be. Sometimes young men think, oh, I'm going to go to Brisbane. I'll have a lot more fun down there. And a lot of kids think that way. But that makes it so much more competitive. So students need to ensure that when they're thinking about their course of study, they're not limiting themselves just to one university. So if they can decide on a course of study or a breadth of course of study, that can actually assist them in this process of getting into university and into a course of study that they are going to enjoy. Okay, so the first bit here, you see eligibility. As QTAC goes through the process, they're going to make sure that you're eligible first. If you are, then they are going to check the ATAR. They're going to check your rank to make sure that it is high enough to be, so you can be added to that course of study for that university. Please be mindful, though, that depending on the numbers of students who are applying for a course of study in a university, the raw ATAR data that they advertise to get into the subject can change. So just like in the old system, just because you made an OP1 does not mean that you will get into medicine at UQ. You have to be in the top half of the OP1s in order to do that. And that's how the rank actually works. So please just keep those things in mind. You might be thinking, oh, I need a 95 or I need a 90. And because of the number of students who are applying, that number can shift greatly. But it can shift down as well. So eligibility requirements. So is the student old enough? Have you taken the prerequisites? They will look at those things. If there is an interview, how did the interview go? Sometimes there are personal statements and questionnaires that need to be completed as well. So if these items have not been fulfilled in the application process, QTAC will not accept the student's application for that course of study. So that's why it's very important that the students know everything that they need to submit, not just putting down a certain course of study as their first preference on the QTAC website, which we'll get to. And we're going to run the kids through that on Thursday. Okay? So merit means, do you have the marks more than anything else? And as this is the first year that students are using the ATAR instead of the OP, it is going to be very, very difficult to predict the possibility of a student having an ATAR, a certain number. All that is dependent on how well everybody else does. So there are calculators on the internet, and students can put in their grades, and it can give them a ballpark figure, and it could be totally wrong. We have no idea. But we will just have to wait and find out. Now, that happens also, I won't fast track that, I'll come back to that point as I come to the slide. All right, so when we're looking at ATAR, we need to remember that that is probably going to be the most common way for students to enter university, but it will not be the only way that students enter university. So many students can get into a university course without an ATAR, all right? So it's not the be-all and end-all. It is for those elite courses such as physiotherapy, engineering, and medicine, more than anything else, dentistry as well. Okay, so for Queensland, our new system has students getting a QCE, meaning their graduation certificate, from QCAA. This will be the first year that QCAA does not calculate the rank. This is now all being passed over to QTAC. So understand that we have a sector change there, okay? So instead of it being a government institution deciding what that rank is going to be, now we have the universities collectively through QTAC deciding what that ATAR is going to be. So QCAA will get the grades and know what a student's marks are out of 100 points in credits. And then that information will be transferred to QTAC, and QTAC does all the calculations. Sorry, I missed one. Okay, so we've been through this before with you, and all the students who are ATAR eligible know that they are ATAR eligible. So at least 4 general subjects. The 5th subject can be either a general, an applied, or a Cert 3 or higher. Also, to get an ATAR, English, whichever English course it is, they must pass. So that means units 3 and 4, what they're studying now, they must pass. Okay, and then we have this information here. You would all probably have known through the information that we've sent to you that instead of doing 3 internal assessments this year, the students are only doing 2. So QTAC has said what we will not do is put the external exam to be any heavier than what it was. So in math and science, for example, the external exam will still only be 50%. What the combination is of the first two internal assessments, we will have to wait and see, because before they added up to something else. All right, 3 adding up to 50%. Now we have 2 adding up to 50%, and that's as far as we know at the moment. Okay, so just please keep that in mind. At least the kids can know the external is worth no more than what it was before, okay, which is a good thing. All right, so we have a few students who will use their Cert 3 in fitness for vet, and again, how will it be calculated? It will be scaled like everything else, and we won't know what the scaling process is until they've done this the first time. All right, so the process of scaling will go through marvelous algorithms, and QTAC has been generous enough to actually share the mathematic computations. So if you're interested in mathematics, high-level mathematics, please get onto the website and see if you can have a little fun yourself. But on the whole, what they're doing is using all of these algorithms in order to create a ranking for all the students who would have entered year 7 at the same time your sons have entered year 7. So whether those students have dropped out or not, they are still in the calculations across the board. So if we had 50% of all of those students dropping out, we would assume then from 0 to 50, those are ATARs, are the students who have dropped out. Okay? So that's what I just want you to keep in mind. It is based on those numbers from year 7, not just the current year 12 cohort. Okay? So the scaling goes in place to say we know that some subjects are a little easier than others, and mathematics is always what they use. So those students who are making an A in mathematical methods, that class will scale higher than general mathematics for an A. So how it's actually going to look afterward, when they have the data for us, it will be a lot easier to understand, and we will have that information then to give to our next year's year 11s in case they do want to change some of their subjects. But unfortunately, we just will not have that information until this first cohort goes through. All right, so to cover themselves, here's a document that they've published. All right, here's more documents that they've published. And here's on a website that they can actually have summarized all those things. All right, there's really no point in parents or students wasting their time to look at the scaling. Just know it's going to happen. What is in the student's control is to do as best as they possibly can on those external assessments, being as prepared as they possibly can, as rested as they possibly can. Everything else is out of their control. Okay, so the sequence of events. So we're in units 3 and 4 now. Okay, we will come to the part in week 4 in term 4 when exams begin, all the external exams begin. We go through that process, okay? QCE will be getting the results from us. We upload them, they confirm the results, and then they grade the externals. They go through that process, and they create grades for the students, okay? Then they will turn that information over to QTAC. Now, you might be wondering, when do we as a school get the information from QCAA? And that's going to be after sometime in December, okay, beginning. So it won't be too different by the time that they've turned it over to QTAC once we get the information. But we've probably all gone on summer holidays by the time we get that. Now, as students find out with their ATAR and from QCAA what the results are at a certain time, they may feel like they've been hard done by and want to actually contest their marks. That is possible. There is a cost involved, and be aware of that, but it is possible. So we've had, since I've been here, this is my 5th year, we've had one student contest his marks, and it just cost him money more than anything else. Okay, so they do have quality assurance processes that they put together, and I just wanted you to be aware of that, okay? But there is the option, okay? So there is a timeline. Now, the ATAR will be released on the 19th of December, okay? So students will find out their ATAR through the QTAC account that they create on Thursday, okay? So it'll be available to them. They'll be able to check in and see what it is. Now, different than the OP, just so that you're aware, QTAC is not going to be informing schools. Eventually, we hope they will, but at the moment, they're worried about schools advertising their ATARs, which they're saying we're not allowed to do legally, so I wanted you to be aware of that. So as we find out how the students' ATARs have gone, we may need to call. We're just going to have to find out what the new system is going to be, okay? All right, but there are going to be plenty of other pathways for tertiary education, all right? So there are lots of institutions, as you will see here. And again, it's all about the pathways. So students who might be wanting to go into TAFE, for example, after they leave school, you know, they can still use QTAC in order to get a course of study there. All right. Now, Ms. Light, who is our careers and vet coordinator, she is very knowledgeable in the variety of things that are available for students. So I do encourage all students, unless they're dead certain they know where they're going, make an appointment to see Ms. Light sooner rather than later. And that means from next week on, as she is at the Year 10 camp. Okay? So what are we looking for? All right, when you get to the QTAC website, there are different things that you can actually see. Now, the applications for different things and putting in your prerequisites open tomorrow. But the whole idea is for you to list your courses of study, your preferences that you would like to do, and put them in a good order. Okay, so hopefully students have found a course, looked at institutions, read about what the prerequisites are, found other information about it, especially at the university, and are making sure that they're ticking the boxes for prerequisites, assumed knowledge, and recommended study. Okay, so that hopefully we've gone through from the set plan on. All right, just as a reminder, all right, if it is prerequisites, courses are in courses of study, they're looking to ensure that you've had those courses, and that can go in for merit. So if they don't get enough people interested in a course, and they're hoping that you've taken specialist maths and you haven't, all right, they only get 30% of what they want, they will open the course up to students who have not had specialist mathematics. But as I said, once the student gets into that course, he's going to have to pay for a bridging course for specialist mathematics to get him up to scratch where he needs to be for that course of study, okay? All right, I'm not going to go over that one. Let's just look at preferences. All right, on the QTAC website, students are going to be listing their courses of preference, okay? So which one do they want to do the most? I want to be a doctor, so I want to go to university at UQ. And if I can't do that, I want to go into nursing at UQ. And if I can't do that, then I want to go into pharmacy at UQ. Okay? So those sorts of things are a little bit of a concern because it's more about the university than it is about the course of study. So when you're talking to your son about what he really wants to do, the degree is more important than where he goes. Much more. So if a student really wants to be a doctor, we need to look at the universities that offer it. So where do you want to go first? You place that in your first preference. Where would you want to go second for that same degree? And then that becomes 2. So you can only list 6. And what generally happens is in your preferences, all right, they will only look at the first 3. But there's a trick to get around this, and we'll show you. Okay, so ordering your preferences, we have desired, backup, and pathway courses. So I want to be a doctor, but I may not have the ATAR. So maybe if I go into nursing as my backup course, I can get into the university and medicine through nursing. And maybe if I show my grades, then the following year I can get into medicine to become a doctor. Well, what if I don't have the grades for that? Maybe I look at something in the science field with medicine, and I don't need as high of an ATAR for that. So you can be ordering your preferences based on how high that ATAR needs to be, which is a good idea, okay? All right, so here's an example for you to look at. I think I skipped one. I'll just go back. No, that's okay. All right, so here's the basic thing we'll be going over with the students. Do all of your preferences have the same offer round date? Some offers are in December. Some offers are in following January. Some offers come out in October. It just depends on the university. So the best way to do your preferences is by the date first. So if you really want to go to UQ, but it's a January date for offers, you might need to move that preference from first to second or to third to keep other options open. Because students will have a chance to reorder their preferences. So they won't be disadvantaged. But once that offer round happens, say there's one in October, and you haven't listed it high enough, they won't get an offer there. You've missed the offer round, okay? So we'll walk the kids through that on Thursday, so they're ensuring that they understand the importance of the date and how that needs to be positioned on their preferences, and knowing that they will be able to get into their account and switch the preferences. So if, for example, I wanted to go to JCU the most, and that offer is going to be in December, and for the same degree, I'm wanting to go to possibly Australian Catholic University, and that offer is going to be in October. I need to make sure the ACU offer is my first preference. And if I'm offered a position, I have a choice. I can accept, I can conditionally accept, or I can reject. So conditionally accepting is a very good thing. All right, it's not the university I want to go to the most, but I'm going to conditionally accept it, and now I will move the JCU, my first preference, back to preference 1. So is that sort of making sense with everyone? All right, so it's a straightforward process, not to disadvantage the students. They just need to remember that they have to do something with the offer, accept conditionally or reject, and then go into their account and move the preferences. All right, in order to make sure students aren't disadvantaged, there are also educational access schemes. This is not going to work this year for COVID, probably, in Queensland, to be an excuse why one student feels disadvantaged, because it's pretty much disadvantaged everyone. All right? Now, making this application, and you may think there's a good reason why, in comparison to a student in Brisbane, that you've been disadvantaged. All right, I've had to tell students living in Cairns is not a disadvantage. So there's no point in doing an EAS saying the reason you need special consideration is because you're from Cairns. Now, if they lost their physics teacher and we had no one to teach physics, there's a good reason then to fill out the EAS, because that physics mark is going to be impacted by the lack of a physics teacher. But if there's something that's happening in your family and you want to give it a shot, you can speak with Miss Light and get her advice. You can also speak to me. I'm the one who signs off on those things, and I will be very candid with you if I think you have a shot of getting any consideration or not. But QTAC and QCA are both very, well, compassion is just not part of the dynamic of the organization or the institution, so please just keep that in mind. Okay? So I'll let you just look at those. Okay, and as you look through, just remember it's each institution. So that's why once you figure out what course of study you think you want to look at or you think you have an idea which institutions to go to, really start investigating those institutions, because they can offer a lot of other things that you're not aware of. Did I miss something good? No. Okay. There we go. All right, so when we do these things, we're going to ensure that the kids have their Louis numbers. All right. Also, parents, they need to make sure that they have an outside email address, whether it's Gmail, Hotmail, whatever. They are not to use their school email. It will be destroyed once they leave school. So there's going to be nothing for them to correspond with through their school email. So help them set up a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, however you're going to, whatever you're interested in on that. Okay? Sorry. All right. I don't think we have any international students, so I'm going to skip that one. All right, and then we look at the fees. All right, so year 12 students, you'll need to pay a $45 fee. And with that, you'll be able to put in your preferences, and you'll be able to switch your preferences 3 times. But if you need to switch more than that, it's $45 each time you switch your preferences. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So before you do that, ask. Miss Light will help you. I will help you. If your parents know, they will help you. Okay? But that's the information we want to make sure the kids have. They can't just go in and change their mind. All right? They need to be certain. Okay? Okay, so offers. You get an email and an SMS. If you've given that, you open up your My Application. Again, this is through the QTAC account. All right? And then you'll have to respond to the offer. So accept, reject, or defer. Okay? So here's a little flow chart that shows you about the process on how you respond to an offer. But it's fairly simple, okay, as I've said before. If you know you can conditionally accept, it's the best way to go on your first offer, and then move your preferences. Okay? Deferment. For students who want to apply to university but want to take the year off, they will have to go through a deferment process as well, and Ms. Light can help you through that. But that's the key thing. More than anything else, conditionally accepting an offer, then you know at least you're in. Okay? You'll have time to do that. Okay, so here we look at the offer rounds. Okay, nursing, different universities, but the offer rounds of 23 of December are the first two. And they need to be the first two because they're the first offers. And you don't want really, if you're not really interested in Griffith University, all right, because you want to go to ACU, you just move ACU above and conditionally accept nursing. Okay, so it gives you ideas on how you can move them. Okay, so if you don't get your first, second, or third preference, okay, that means that the student is shooting way above his level in what he wants. So that's why when we're trying to get students to look at what the institution is hoping for, whether it's an ATAR of 90, an ATAR of 70, an ATAR of 65, we need to make sure there's a spread on that. For students who are not straight A students, they should not be making their spread only between 99.95 and 90. Okay? So if you shoot too high and you don't get that ATAR, they just skip you. So just keep that in mind. Okay? So here are some reasons why students don't get offers. Fairly simple. Being organized. Okay, skip that one. All right, but just keep in mind, there are always options. Okay, so even if something were to go horribly wrong, QTAC, working for the universities, will assist you in getting your son into a tertiary course of study. Okay, even if it's after the due date, they will find some way to help, but it might just not be the ideal entryway. Okay, so key dates. As we're looking at these, all right, in November, offer rounds will continue. 20th is the last day for Queensland in year 12s. Okay? So, November 20th, they've gone home and they're with you, hopefully. And then we look at the different offer rounds that happen. So again, knowing the university with the course of study when the offer round is going to be is very, very important. So getting ready to apply, that is what we're going to help the students with, right? And on Thursday, setting up that account. Okay? So what I'd encourage you to do is when your sons get home on Thursday is just double check, all right? So did you get your account all set up? And maybe even show you that the account is set up. It's just a safe way to make sure things are done and they're done correctly. That way, oh, I thought it worked and it didn't, all right? Now that's all from me at the moment. I know I've sped through this, but like I said, the PowerPoint will be up there. More than anything that I want you to take away from this is that students are going to be in-serviced on what to do on Thursday, okay? For those students who are on work experience, we will make time to be with them so they can actually create their accounts as well and know what to do in case they're trying to go through QTAC for a tertiary course of study, right? If you as parents have questions and want to email, you can email either me or Mrs. Light, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. But please do not email until next week, as things are a little, like I said, Ms. Light is out of town for Activities Week on a camp, and Activities Week is keeping me quite busy. All right? Now, I will stay back for questions. Anybody have a quick question that you think the whole group might benefit from? Well, that is wonderful. Okay, I will stay back over here if you have any questions at the end, and I'm going to turn over to Mr. Brennan. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Helms, and can I thank you for coming as parents, and obviously we've got a couple of our Year 12 cohort here tonight as well. I just thought I'd take 2 minutes of your time before, as Mr Helms has said, he's available. I know Mr Dorahy is around somewhere as well. Certainly I'm happy to stay behind and answer any questions that we can. You may remember we spoke last year up in C3 around some of this information, and I gave 2 pieces of advice which I think, obviously Mr Helms has given you a lot of information tonight, but the advice for me doesn't change a great deal. In primarily your roles continue to be at this point to support your sons however they need that support. That may be the way of a friendly ear. For adolescent boys, often it's through their stomach. But just making sure that they are in good headspace and certainly look at support them. To the students, I continue to say, you just continue to work as hard as you can to achieve the best possible results that you can. And I did say to you last year, forget about the white noise at this point. That's the school's problem. And the school are working very, very hard, and Mr Helms, along with many others, are in a position where they're making sure that all the information is passed on to yourselves and to your sons. So we've now reached a point, obviously Thursday is a pretty important day where the boys get to register and their accounts and log on for the first time and start looking at choices and courses and venues and universities and states and all those sorts of things. And I'd again, speaking to a couple of families over the last month, don't necessarily, Mr Helms said, limit yourself to Brisbane. I'd say don't limit yourself to Queensland. There are a number of other, as Mr Helms put, and that PowerPoint will be on the parent portal, there are other places other than QTAC where your son will be in a position to apply. So we are getting not so much to the pointy end, but there is a lot of information that hopefully that you've taken in today around subject choices. One quick story, and I reflect this, and it was some years ago, but it was a family member of mine who always wanted to be a physiotherapist, and it wasn't called the ATAR then, and it was in ACT, but he got a score that didn't get him into exactly what he wanted to, and so he had to take a lower preference. But as Mr Helms has said, there are back doors into all of these degrees, and he worked very hard in his first year at a different university, which he got a distinction average or whatever he required to move across to physiotherapy. And he's now living a life of a physio, which he's very much enjoying. Mr Helms also mentioned about ATARs, and there are other ways into universities, so it is important to keep those options open. I know some universities in Queensland now are looking at early entry, so they're offering this Year 12 cohort potentially spaces in their university prior to doing their external exams. So as parents and the students, they'll be getting information on that. Look at exploring those sorts of options as well. I also, as I said, mentioned that we as a college will continue to look at best preparing your sons to get the best results they can. And I think it was very generous and very sensible and prudent of QCAA to wipe one of their external assessments. And I know that speaking to a lot of the Year 12 boys, that released a great deal of pressure, and I'm sure you would have felt it at home. Certainly released a lot of pressure off the staff as well. But it does give us an opportunity, and obviously being the first year we're looking at it anyway, but to look at doing things again differently. And whilst there is no system in any 2 states the same, you can always draw some parallels and some best practice from other states. And one of the things that we'll be doing with your sons in week 9 of this term, we'll be doing mock block exams. So we'll be looking, because the reality is we should have all of the work completed, so all of the content delivered to your sons by about week 7 of this term, which then gives us an opportunity to look at this mock block. The assessment tasks have already been in and marked by our teachers. So what we're looking at doing in this mock block is being very, very explicit in the way that we're writing these exams, and the questions will be very much around particular units of work, and they'll be grouped in that way. And as I've said to the Year 12 boys, we're not particularly interested in an individual's score in that exam. What we're really trying to do is gather data to actually track the cohort and the areas and the units that they've done particularly well in, but far more importantly, the units of work that they may have struggled in. And that could be because the unit was hard. That could be the unit might have been right in the height of COVID when the boys weren't here, and there may have been some gaps in their learning. It may have also been that it was just a unit that the boys just struggled with. And once we've been able to glean that data, so in week 9 of this term, those exams will occur. And it'll be a unique experience for a boy who will never have done it before, probably never do it again, where he'll be sitting in an exam that isn't actually counting specifically to his individual score. But to me, and as I've said this to the boys, it's probably a more important exam than an individual mark at this point. Because what the staff will do, they'll mark those, and then they'll meet as faculties to really drill down and have a look at areas that the boys seem not to quite understand. And then we've got 2.5 weeks in term 4, where that's the unit, that's the stuff that we'll be doing in lecture styles, in small group styles, in theatre styles, in all sorts of different ways in getting the boys to teach each other, to break down potential questions. There are some mock exams around at the moment, although again, being the first year for Queensland, there isn't a lot of resources, but I can say that the college has already gathered the last 19 years of HSC papers in New South Wales in every subject, and we've got the last 5 or 6 years from Victoria. So we're doing at the moment some comparisons between the units of work that the boys are doing currently and looking at the style of questions other states are using. So there is a fair bit being done. And again, given the fact we haven't got that third assessment task, it's giving us a lot of opportunity to do that. So I'd really encourage you to, when it does come up, and I have spoken, as I said, I know I've said it a few times, but it's something we're just going to continue to hammer into the boys, that these mock block exams are really important as information gathering for us as a school on their cohort, on their particular subject, particular units of their subject, in which we can spend a bit of time and put some resources together over the holidays and make sure that when the boys return, as I said, there'll be a lot of small groups and lectures and tutorial type setups for them leading into obviously week 4. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about very briefly is completely a side topic for this, and that's obviously the formal on Wednesday night. And I thought it would be remiss of me without having, well, given the fact we've got a few parents together, to not recognise the work of Mr. Doherty, of Mrs. Dean, and also Mrs. Kingston Bull, who is our Communications and Community Engagement Officer. For them to have to think outside the square, and I've spoken to the boys and the parents throughout the course of the last couple of weeks, we've been asked questions of how we're able to do this, given other schools, not necessarily diocesan schools, but other schools have already announced to their community that formals are not allowed. We've worked really hard with CS and also particularly their WHS officer, or their manager in charge of all of that. Funnily enough, I caught up just by chance with the local member, Michael Healy, the day that we announced that the formal was going to be on that day, and his office had a call from a member of the public who didn't say where they were from, but saying there's no way that this is legal. So he was touching base with me to see whether it was, or how we'd done it and what we'd done. So there has been a lot of work. I know it is very different with cars being at Barlow Park and driving through the school here and getting photos and then getting on buses and all of those sorts of things. We had the curveball of no dancing. I felt like watching Footloose over the weekend, actually, just to remind us of what that was like. But we have done, well, when I say we, Andrew Doherty, Mrs. Dean and Mrs. Kingston Bull have done a lot of work. So as you're aware, we've been able to hire a shed, and it's a lot better than a shed, but we'll call it a shed. Oka, which is obviously a well-known restaurant in Cairns, they're fitting the entire shed out for us, and they're feeding the formal partners, or the formal students and their partners, a lovely 3-course meal with a drinks package. So again, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Doherty and those staff, and apologise that you won't be allowed on the site. That was just a bridge too far with our COVID restrictions. Obviously, you all had to register for this. The fluidness of cars coming in and numbers of people coming in and out, we were just told it was probably just a bridge too far on this occasion. You would have known, or you would have read, that we are letting the boys finish earlier on Wednesday. There are obviously a lot of picturesque places around Cairns to take those initial early photos. We'll certainly have a professional photographer here to take photos of the boys and their partners coming out of the cars. We'll also have one of our Year 11 students do a video and some other photos that we'll put together in a presentation which we'll release probably early next week, probably on the YouTube channel somewhere, but you'll definitely be sent the link there. And there's also a professional photographer who will also be at the venue, taking again partner photos, small group photos, homeroom team photos with teachers or whatever sort of photos they'd like. The night will conclude, we'll be on buses at 10:30, and we would ask that the boys will be back here with their partners between 11:15 and 10:50, and we would really like to make sure that all of the boys and their partners are being collected by 11, so the staff are in a position to obviously go home once the last one's been collected. So again, thank you very much for coming this evening, to Mr. Helms for putting together tonight. I know Mr. Rigby has been up in the box with one of our Year 9 students, Matthew Christensen. Again, we've had to think a little bit differently. Our IT guy is actually on leave. We've got staff all parts of areas at the moment on different camps and retreats, and we've got Mr. Michael Herbs who's filming this for those who couldn't be here. But again, thank you very much. Mr. Helms is here, Mr. Dorahy's here, I'm here, Mr. Rigby's here for any other questions. And again, if you wouldn't mind when you are leaving, as you've been asked, if you can head out the middle doors here and then just make your way to Severn Street or Draper Street or Scott Street, wherever you have parked. And we look forward to seeing you all again at something very soon. You'll note I haven't mentioned anything about graduation because I don't want to tempt fate. We just don't know what's going to happen, but we haven't cancelled it, we haven't postponed it, we haven't changed it. We just don't know what October is going to look like at this stage. But thank you very much again for coming.